Good morning, welcome to Cervello Live. I'm your host, Chris Dames. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had an absolutely amazing weekend. Cervello Live, if you haven't tuned in before, is about speaking to amazing people to talk about how they help and potentially support you, sharing some concepts that are going to help you achieve your financial goals. Hopefully we're definitely going to have some laughs, actually. Not hopefully, we're definitely going to have some laughs and some amazing chat. And you'll come out of this, watching this, with a few more tools to live your life in the way you'd like to. I'm really pleased today to be introducing Jen Lister. Jen, how are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. Feeling very motivated on a Monday morning.
Good. How was your weekend?
It was lovely. I got to try out an e-bike, which was fun, and yeah, I've been dipping this morning at Mersey Island, so it's been a good 24 hours.
You know what? So I hadn't tried an e-bike, and then I went to Paris earlier in the year, and Paris is really good at they've got loads of Uber bikes, but they've also got the cycle lanes.
Yeah.
And they have got the scariest roundabouts I've ever seen in my life, but they've got cycle lanes that go up to them. And it was amazing. But they're quite powerful e-bikes, aren't they? You don't realise.
They're amazing. Like you literally start and then you just have this boost, like you're a superhero or something. It is awesome.
Getting used to that as well, because you don't get that in a normal bike. It's all you. It just takes you along. Where did you take your e-bike?
Well, we went to the park and they were doing trials of, there's e-bikes with cargo holders at the front. So they were doing trials of that. So we just practiced around the park. They were looking for feedback because they're thinking of investing in some for the park as part of the council. So yeah, we just put Mabel in the front, my daughter. Me and Ben had a little go. It was fun. I really want to get one.
And you say in the front, it was like sort of child-friendly e-bikes, was it?
Yeah, so they basically have got sort of an area in the front where you could put all your shopping. You can fit, some of them had seats for 4 children, but this one had seats for 2 children, and then all of the rest of your shopping. So the idea is that you don't need your car to do your food shop and any errands around the town. So it was quite fun.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, European cities do it better than we do at the minute. Because like Paris, I mean, Amsterdam, you know, I went out for a run when I was in Amsterdam a few years ago. Went out for a run and literally the streets are covered in bikes. You know, everybody cycles. It's just a different culture, and I think we are getting that way, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think out there, all of the people on the road also cycle, so there's more empathy and understanding. Whereas here, it's a little bit more scary to go on the road.
And I my sort of next physical challenge is going to be involving open water swimming. But I haven't been brave enough yet to try it. So what do I need to know about open water swimming?
There's a different technique when you're swimming in open waters compared to normal swimming. I think and you need to make sure you're spotting, because it's very easy to basically have your head down and then you come up and you're like, oh, I was meant to go that way, but I'm over there.
You know what? It's funny because I was talking to one of my clients about this, who is a keen runner but never swam, but his wife was a big swimmer. So he sort of changed disciplines and did. I think they did the Great North Swim as like one of their events. The one I want to do is in the Serpentine in Hyde Park. But he said that before, like he tried it before he had any lessons, didn't spot, and then ended up about 400 meters away from where he was meant to be, and it was more effort to then swim back to get to the point where. So yeah, spot is a good tip. Spot is a good tip. But yeah, I need to.
Yeah. The tides can be scary as well, like really powerful.
Yeah. Do you swim in the like? You see swim, or is it like sort of in lakes or?
No, yeah, it's in the sea, in the estuary at Mersey Island. So yeah, but it's more of a dip than a kind of a hardcore swim.
Yeah, it pushes you around.
More of a mental health thing.
So we'll get back to you in a minute, Jen. Certainly I'm really excited about talking to you about what you do. What I'd like to do first is just share 3 really simple stories. Now, in my sort of day job, I tend to tell the stories as a way to explain financial concepts, and those stories come from lived experience. There's stuff that's happened to me that's taught me about money throughout my life. And I've got probably 3 stories at the minute that I'm telling a lot. So I want to share with you the stories because each one comes with a bit of a lesson about what I learned about money and how it's helped me. And the first one comes from quite a few years ago now. So I'm 44. I'm going to go back to the days before smartphones when I was 19. And I had my first job so my career has been mainly all in financial planning and financial services. I had a year as a failed recruitment consultant, and I was just the worst recruitment consultant in the world. But then I got a job at the Woolwich Building Society. That was my first job in financial services. And I loved it because the Woolwich was about a community, it was a mutual building society, a really good place to work. The people were lovely. And I really found that, for me, financial planning, financial services at that point was about relationships, relationships of trust and helping people. But new into the job market, new into financial services, didn't know too much about money. And after my first month of working, I got my pay slip. Now, weirdly, I'm looking at this pay slip thinking, they've told me my salary is this, I'm expecting that. And then I look at this pay slip and there's a transaction on it I don't get, and it's pensions, right? First time, 19, never had pensions. And the withdrawal on the pension, I remember it to this day, was £42, right? And I'm looking at that and going, I'm 19, 42 quid, and this is how far I'm going back, Jen. 42 quid was 2 nights in the pub, right? That was in my 19-year-old mentality. I'm thinking, right, this is 2 nights out. So I go into the branch manager and say, Jane was the lady's name. I said, Jane, I need to stop this pension thing because it's 2 nights out, and actually that's more valuable to me at this time than the whatever these pensions are going to give me. And really interestingly, Jane said to me, she didn't say to me no. She went, you need to go and have a chat with June. And this was my first experience with a financial advisor and planner. June was the financial advisor in the branch. And she was, at that time, a similar age to me now. So she was in her mid-40s. And I walked in and, super cocky 19-year-old, knowing nothing in hindsight, but with plenty of confidence, said to June, I'm really sorry. Look, Jane said I need to talk to you about this pension. I need the £42 a month. That's my social money. Can you stop it? And she went, you're not coming out the pension, and you'll thank me in 20 years.
Brilliant.
I was like, no, you don't understand. And she went, I'll say it again. You're not coming out the pension, and you'll thank me in 20 years. And I was just too intimidated at that point to say no. So for the 7 or 8 years, I worked for the Woolwich and then Barclays, because Barclays eventually took over. I just stayed in the pension scheme. I think I was secretly always worried about what June would say if I came out yet. So I just stayed in it. And as I got my qualifications and started becoming a financial advisor and planner myself, I sort of just understood the benefit of it. Fast forward to sort of probably a couple of years ago, I was early 40s, 41, 42. I decided to review all of my pension schemes, not just the ones that I had currently, and looked at the Woolwich one, and it was worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. Wow. And that one piece of advice, that tiny thing that June did to me, by just saying you'll stay in the pension and you'll thank me, was so true. It was just that element of just saying, because that's going to underpin my own journey to financial independence. 2 weeks after doing the check, I see June's son in Tesco's. And I just said, and she's living in Spain now, but I just said to her, Dan, can you just thank your mum I don't even know if she'll remember just this 5-minute conversation, but she did me a real favour, just making sure that I didn't make that mistake. I think the moral of the story for me was, even with the financial pressure young people are under at the minute, starting early and starting as soon as you can and building those habits of regular saving are just so fundamentally important to give you the sort of base of financial freedom. Jen and I, I'm sure, are going to be talking about this a bit later on, but financial freedom is about living the life you want. And certainly the earlier you can start thinking about the life you want to lead, and sort of just putting the building blocks to help and support you get there, is really important. So again, I'd like to say it personally. I don't know if she'll ever watch this, but thank you, Jude, for doing that work. Number two, story number two happened more recently. I had a really weird experience in lockdown one, because I had one daughter who was going through her GCSEs and one daughter who was 8, and I realised that I was the worst homeschooling dad in the world, just trying to navigate everything that came with it. But what I also realised, that kids listen, right? Kids listen, and this is what happened. So I spent the first 6 weeks of lockdown talking to my clients about the fact that markets, investment markets, the companies that we all invest in for our longer term financial well-being, were down. So they were taking a wobble, primarily because of COVID and what had happened. Now that sort of downturn for our clients lasted between April and August. And if you would have panicked and not stayed with the plan and sold out of the investments in April, you definitely would have lost out. The best thing you can do when there's volatility in any sort of investment market is remember, focus on the longer term plan and stay the course. And what I was doing is spending loads of time talking to my clients about that plan. Is we need to be consistent and make sure we carry it on. And I didn't realise the kids listened, because about 2 months into lockdown, I went to my fridge. And on my fridge, there was a printed sheet. The kids had done it really well. Printed sheet that at the top just said "Dad Bingo." And I'm going, like, took this off the fridge, like, took magnets off, took this off the fridge, went to the kids and went, "Oh, what have you done?" And they thought it was hilarious. They just loved the fact that they're winding their dad up. And they said, "Well, Dad, you seem to repeat a lot of phrases quite consistently on the phone." Have I ever told you a story, Jen?
No, but I love it already.
So they seem to, like, you repeat a lot of phrases consistently on the phone to clients, and we just thought it'd be funny to see how many, what you said, like, time and time again, and how often you said it. And that's what Dad Bingo is about. So I've looked at this sheet, and apparently the thing that I said the most during lockdown was "This too shall pass." So keep calm, relax, we'll get over this. Let's not make any sort of nervous panic decisions immediately. What we're going to do is just take a longer term informed view. And it's weird, like, I'm glad the kids heard that, because it's that I want them to be empowered by really good, like, sort of decision-making principles and not be panicked when they make choices. But the other interesting thing is, it showed me, number one, that just the value of having somebody on your side. You know, we recently did some testimonial videos for Cervello, and one of my clients, Sarah, said to me, I want Chris on my side so I can get on with real life and know I'm being looked after financially. But not only that, that element of just making sure that if you are feeling scared or nervous, you've got somebody to pick the phone up to. And that, particularly in times of volatility, is definitely my job. Third story I want to share is about one of my clients who's been with us forever. A guy called Alistair, really amazing guy. And when he first came to see me, he said to me, "Chris, I don't think I need your help." I was like, "Okay, why are you here?" He said, "Well, my mate said to come and have a chat with you. But the reason that I'm here is because I do want to get organised. I want to get organised financially." I was like, okay, interesting. Why don't you think you need, you know, a financial plan? He said, I'm never going to stop doing what I do. I love work. I love what I do, and I don't think I'm ever going to stop. I said, cool. Tell me a bit about that and help me understand what that looks like. And he said to me, well, I'm an architect. I've been an architect for years. I live in Dollar, expat lifestyle, really enjoy it. I currently are building football stadiums. So I'm building football stadiums, and I'm inspired by the work that I do, because I look back and go, I'm part of this project that's really inspiring. I was like, that sounds amazing. Let's get you organised and let's work together. So if that ever changes, then we can sort of evolve and look at the plan. 2 years later, he comes back and we reviewed it year in, year out. 2 years later, the story's changed. And he said to me, they've changed my contracts and I'm not building football stadiums anymore. I'm building flats. I'm building tower blocks, basically. And frankly, Chris, I'm not inspired anymore. And because of the work we'd done, we could tell him that he'd never run out of money again. He'd already achieved financial independence based on the wealth that he'd built. And that allowed him to do something really interesting, because once we told him he was financially free, he loved it, really enjoyed hearing about the fact that it was financially free. But then it worried him a bit. And he said, Chris, I know I'm financially free, but I'm not ready to retire. And does this financial freedom mean that I should stop? And I was like, no, what it means is you've got the choice. And what it means is you only do work that inspires you now. You only do work where you're going to get up every day and think, this is floating my boat. And that's what he did. He gave up that contract, still works, 72 now, still works, but only does work that actually inspires him every day. And that, for me, is what financial planning is about. It's about making sure you empower people with the choices to live the life they want. That's the real value add. And now my job with Alistair is to help him spend his money a bit better and encourage him to say, what are those things that you've always wanted to experience? Now you've built that financial independence that you can actually do. And that might be travel, that might be helping his family out, that might be all these sort of things, but just really making sure that he's engaged in that thought process of saying, now I'm not going to run out of money again based on the assumptions we've made. What can I do to make sure I've got a life with purpose and with meaning? And that, I think, probably best explains what financial planning is to me. Hopefully you've got something out of those 3 stories and there's something in there that's useful. Really excited about sort of having a chat with Jen. First of all, for the people in our audience who don't know, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so my name's Jen. So I'm Jen Lister. I'm a business coach. I work with people that are looking to start businesses from the ground up, helping them with developing the business plan and going through that whole process. But also I work with people that have got established businesses and help them grow their business. So my thing is strategy. I love strategy. I've worked in strategy since I graduated, which was a long time ago now, and for over 10, nearly 15 years now, I've worked in strategy across corporate and entrepreneurship. But to share more about me as a person, so I'm just got married, so my partner's called Ben and I've got a little girl called Mabel who's nearly 2. I love doing outdoorsy stuff. I love being out in nature, so I love paddle boarding and do a lot of running. I did the Colchester Zoo 10k last weekend, which was really quite hard but fun. So I spend most of my time doing family stuff and working, and then doing all the kind of the fun stuff in between.
Amazing, sounds good. Right, so again, I did send you some questions, Jim, but I knew that us having a chat would mean we go off topic at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I haven't really looked at them, so
yeah. So firstly, I suppose one of the questions that I'm curious about is, in your experience with people starting businesses, what's their motivation? What is it they're looking to achieve when they start a business?
It's a really good question, because you have to have a belief, because the financial side of things can be really tough. So I had a really cool client actually this year that went on this amazing retreat to this eco place, and as a result she had this eco business idea, and she was just so sure about what she wanted to create and what she was doing. She was just piling everything she could into it, which was amazing. So I think people just have this, there's something inside them that they just need to grow at some stage in their life, and they might have had a life event. So someone I know that started their business, they had a health issue that had come up, and they decided to leave their kind of corporate job and go into working for themselves and being self-employed, because it is more risky. But I think when you've gone through a life-changing event, you're a bit like, well, I'm just going to do it now.
Yeah, it's taking that fear away, isn't it? Now, it's not right for everybody, but certainly, I mean, 12 years in now, I think I'm a bit unemployable, to be honest. So it's lucky I run a business, but
I don't know. I think you're pretty inspiring, Chris.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, that element of, when I look at our business journey, the first 2 years were the bit where you go, have I done the right thing? And because I think like that sort of set up and launch, it it can be a scary place, right? So
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
talk to me about like starting a business, if it is scary, which we've decided it is, and people are just going to feel the fear and do it anyway, and just sort of jump towards getting it done. Talk to me about some of those fears and what people can do to mitigate those fears, and if it's the right thing for them, do it.
Yeah, I think, and this might sound cliche, but I genuinely believe that getting support is important. Um, and it might be with a business coach, or it might be a consultant, but it might not be. It might be asking someone that that's a friend of a friend that's already got a business in that sector, or has got experience in that type of business.
Yeah.
So for example, I know we might talk about this later, but I've launched a podcast very recently. I must have spoken to about 10 to 15 people, you yourself included, Chris, that have got a podcast, because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what the pros and the cons are, and I'm not just going to speak to one person, because I want to become an expert at it before I do it. So I would advise anyone to try and find someone that's already in the sector and ask thought-provoking questions like, what are your biggest challenges? Because then you find out what the bad things are, and if you can handle them, you can probably do it. And also ask the good stuff too.
Yeah, you know what? I think, and my experience is that people are massively generous. Number one, I think most people like to talk about themselves.
Yes.
So asking intelligent questions and letting people share their stories is always a good thing. But also, I think generally my experience in business and in life generally is most people are generally good and will help out if they can.
Yeah.
So certainly asking the questions. And when you started your business, what questions did you ask, and what insights did you get?
Okay, so I've had two businesses now. This is my second business, and they're both different. So the first one was more franchising, and this one's more just me on my own. I think when you can get data, I would say get as much data as you can. So in the franchise scenario, lots of my questions were around, let me look at the financial forecasts, let me talk to all the different options, all the different companies, and get as much qualitative and quantitative information as I can. So get that data. But I do think there's an element of gut feel to it as well. And I think you have to kind of do lots of soul searching, actually. And I don't think it's good to just wake up one day and start a business. I think it needs to be a journey. I think it needs, so I didn't even realize this, but I started a blog a couple of years ago when I was pregnant, and that was nothing to do with my business. But actually, when I look back at it, I can see how that was a part of me evolving what I stood for, what I believed in. And it was for me a really good life, almost self-life coaching experience for me.
Yeah, I mean, you know what's interesting? I think, and I don't do it enough, if I'm honest, because I'm writing the book at the minute. But I used to, a few years ago, pretty consistently journal. Like, just I used to write on the blog about whatever,
Yes.
and I had a year where I read a book a week and just wrote about the books, and that was it. But journaling and just like sort of looking at some of those experiences, reflecting on them, and thinking about how I can apply them to my life is something that I need to do better at. Funny enough, we, as you know, and some of our sort of people watching this probably might not know, is one of my hobbies is I run a podcast called The Kindness Project, where we talk about people doing inspirational things in the world. There's a guy that we know who actually was a friend of Cassie's from school, who's currently running around the UK. So he's doing this journey. Basically, he's doing 5,000 miles. He's doing like a marathon a day for like 4 months.
Wow.
And we were speaking to him, and the reason he's doing it is to fundraise for a mental health charity. He's ex-forces and he's fundraising to start this mental health charity.
That's amazing.
And we were talking about some of the stuff that's helped him and his mental health, particularly coming out of the forces, seeing what he's seen, and just sort of maintain a positive mental health. He said one of his top 3 is writing about his experiences every day. And I said, well, why do you think that helps? And his answer to that was, well, it just gets it out of my head and on a page, and allows me to reflect on it in a different way than if it was in there. And I completely get that. I think writing for you and for an audience is just as powerful.
Absolutely. We spend so much of our lives trying to please others and filling our days being busy doing chores and work and everything, but actually just taking a step back and being creative, whether it's with writing or doodling or anything, it's really magical actually. And you find you become more creative. It's sort of self-fulfilling.
You know what, as well, the weird thing is I used to write and just delete bits and go, well, that's not really what I think. Like, so it allows me to clarify thoughts as well, right? I need to get back in the habit of doing it, definitely.
And just to bring it back to business, so if any of your audience are thinking about starting a business, like just doodling brand name ideas or doodling what your website could look like, or just some content you could do on social media for your business, just coming up with random ideas. No one needs to know that you're thinking about a business. You don't, and this is another top tip that I always tell people, is like, you don't have to tell the world, you don't have to tell every one of your friends and every one of your family if you want to start something. Your life is your life. And I think too much of the time and I know I'm guilty of this, worry about what everyone else is going to think and project that, and then that makes you paralyzed from taking action.
I agree. I mean, it's that element of you haven't got to create and publish. It can be just about you, can't it? And that's the thing. If you're getting a benefit from it, why not? Now, as you know, I'm a massive fan of effectively designing the life you want to lead, and then working out what you need to do to live that life. I had a really interesting experience a few years ago, and somebody said to me, Chris, you've got a really good lifestyle business, right? And I've been taught to be a bit offended by that. And looking back, it was a ridiculous attitude to have, to be honest, because I've got a really good lifestyle business. But looking back, I was like, how dare you? I've got a proper business, and a lifestyle business isn't a proper business. But now my perspective's changed completely. And I was like, actually, why would you want anything that gives you any undue pressure? Actually, a lifestyle business is, if we believe that is life first and work second, is what we should always fight to. I know you believe that as well. So tell me a little bit more about how you help people engineer that.
So just to reiterate the question, so how I help people create a lifestyle business, is that what you mean?
Yeah. Life first, and then the business serves them in terms of.
Absolutely. This is something I really believe in. I think a lot of people work with business coaches and they just think about the business, but I completely disagree with having an amazing thriving business that you're making loads of profit from, but actually, I don't know, your relationship's falling apart at home, or you're not happy with your health, or whatever other part of your world is kind of falling apart. So one of the things I always do with my clients is start looking at your whole life. So I bring in an element of life coaching, and we will look at what your goals are in all parts of your life before we dive into the business side of things. And what you find is actually when you start achieving it in one part, it kind of snowballs, and the whole spectrum kind of starts to take shape. But it's different for everybody. What makes people tick is so different, and what success means to me and what success means to you will be completely different. And what I will say is something I do early on with a lot of my clients, which doesn't sound that difficult, but it's actually really important, is people looking at people's schedules. So quite often people aren't happy with their week. They're not happy with how they're spending their week, but they're not able to do anything about it because all of these boundaries have just become normal. They're doing the stuff that they're used to doing, and then scared to ask the questions of the people around them for more help or different boundaries. So quite often, so one of my clients at the moment, she works in the NHS as well as runs her business, and we're looking at her changing her shift, so it's enabling her to have more time in her business to grow it and it to be her main source of income. So I just find that transition is really exciting when I work with people that have got a business and they've got their job, and trying to help them
evolve into full-time business owners. How much of the shift do you think needs to be internal? So how much of it is a mindset shift, and how much because I mean, asking the question and saying, look, I need to change the way I'm spending my time. Yes, if you've got a job, there's financial implications of doing that. I think often it's the fear, isn't it, of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. One my very first client, she was so scared of the entrepreneur life versus the corporate life. She was really scared about not getting the regular paycheck, not getting the sick pay, not getting the holiday pay. And I realized that she wasn't quite ready to make that transition. So it was more about just, I think when I work with people, you've got to be at their pace. You can't force people at all to want something that you want for them. And I've had to learn that with my businesses, because I'm helping people grow their businesses. It's up to them to decide. So I do think they've got to be in the right mindset. I can teach people the actions, but I don't want to teach people the actions if they're not ready for it.
100%. And I mean, I think the evolution, particularly if you work with people about helping them with their lives, is you've got to be really careful about imposing your values and lives on them, because what, as you said, what we want might not be what they want, and it needs to be about them.
Absolutely.
So talk to me about this diaries thing, because I agree with you. I think it starts with how we spend our time, doesn't it? And what would the tip be about if you're really unhappy about how you're spending your week at the minute? What small actions could you get to say, I'm going to revolve this into a week that looks a bit better for me?
I think so. What I would start with is actually doing a weekly plan and getting a physical diary. It can be a blank piece of paper and writing Monday to Friday, mapping out what you're doing. If you've got different color pens, using different color pens for stuff that's for the family, say, stuff that's for you on your own, and stuff that's for work. And then doing a mini audit of your time and looking at it, and then look at the stuff that's not making you happy, or saying, okay, I'm not doing anything for myself. I'm spending my whole week either like working and maybe not in a lifestyle business like you, Chris, and it's draining me. And then when I'm home, like I'm constantly doing stuff for other people. I would start there and then look at where can you make small changes. And this might sound really random, but something that Ben and I started to do quite a while ago now, maybe it was 6 months ago or so, is we have a weekly meeting, Ben and I, and that has been amazing. I mean, some weeks we really can't bother to have this meeting, but we have half an hour. We both go through our diaries and we talk about our commitments that we've got. We actually look at our bank account. You'll love this. We actually look at our bank account every single week and like monitor, have we spent a lot this month? Why have we spent so much more? And we'll go through it. That's always a slightly difficult conversation. Although we're very similar in our mindset with money. We're not big spenders as such, but Yeah, so we're investing in property at the moment as well. So we're like, right, we need to chase that up. Or
Yeah,
so I would say doing a diary audit and also having a conversation with the people that are maybe helping you with whether you've got kids, if it's childcare, or whether it's your partner, because you've got logistics to deal with.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Just
often a source of
keeping
pain.
track. Keeping track and reviewing. I mean, it's weird because Kaz and I are in the same business. We spend a lot of time planning both business and personal,
Yeah,
and making sure we sort of spend our time in the way that we want to do it. I think my tip around time
go
is
on. Yeah.
just say no a lot more. Just say no to stuff a lot more.
Yes.
Just
Oh,
like you haven't got to like respond to. I mean, it's really funny. I used to quite enjoy doing it, but it wasn't particularly productive. I used to go to loads of like industry events and
yeah.
awards and stuff like that. And I think part of it, Jen, is ego, and I think you get over that. Like, so it's really nice to be invited to this sort of stuff, but then
Yeah.
you got to say, is it? There's a really good book called Will It Make the Boat Go Faster?
Oh,
And
love that.
there's these bunch of guys were rowers, and I can't remember whether they were like really high end. I can't remember whether it was Oxford or Cambridge or one of the sort of international teams, but their um, uh, uh, decision making process was when they had to just decide on whether they were going to do something or not, is it going to get them closer to the goal that they want to achieve? And their one was, well, look, we need a faster boat, so we need to make the boat go
Oh,
faster. And that was about like diet and nutrition and
yes.
sort of how they spend their time and rest days and all of that sort of stuff. And what they did is then applied it to people's business lives. And actually, if you're spending time on something that isn't getting you closer to a goal,
Yeah.
then you've got to decide, actually, that's just not a good use of my time. Now, I agree
Love
with
that.
you. I think that element of uh, making a decision for me might be I want balance in life and I want quality time with my kids. So I'm not gonna, sacrifice that time because I want to make sure I'm spending it with my girls. So all of
Yeah.
that, but is that action, is that you spending that 3 hours gonna get you closer to what you want to achieve in your life? And if it's a no, you just don't do it.
Yeah.
You just say no. I think saying no a lot, particularly over the last few years, has been really, really useful to me because
It's
it
yeah. It's
well,
definitely got easier, hasn't it, with COVID? You've kind of got a bit of an excuse now. But I think you can say no really kindly as well. I think you
yeah,
can say that thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really grateful, but you can say I've just not got the energy for it right now. Or
yeah,
like
yeah,
I'd love to see us. I think I read some stuff about people having social anxiety and having to go out in groups after COVID, and the advice was to say to someone, I'd rather see you on your own. I'd rather hang out just the two of us than in a big
yeah,
group or go into a big party, because I just don't feel ready to do that yet.
yeah.
And I think people respect you when you're honest sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It hasn't got to be a hard no or a rude no. It just needs to be, look, currently I've got other commitments that I need to prioritize, and
Yeah.
therefore I'd love to come, but maybe next time, that sort of thing. So yeah,
Yes.
just being more precious, protective of your time is good, and it helps if you've got a team as well because they can say no on your behalf, and it hasn't got to be personal.
That is
talk
so
to me,
true.
talk to me about. I've just shared all my secrets now, Jen,
Yeah, I
haven't
know,
I? You
I
know
know,
what I
I
mean?
know now. When I hear from Russell, I'm like, Chris is too busy for that.
I know. But Russ, Cassie, and Dan are in a lot of trouble now because actually, did you say that? Or did Chris say that? Talk to me about the different challenges that leaders of established businesses have got, because clearly,
Yeah.
when a business grows, the challenges that you face are different. Talk to me a little bit about what those challenges are and how they change from startups.
Definitely. I think startups have got a little bit more of that entrepreneurial spirit and that social media knack, if I was to call it something. I think sometimes with more established businesses, the challenges that I've experienced is they're coming into this this world with all the technology and social media and reels and video content, and they're a bit like, oh, I just don't know what to do, and they've lost their confidence a little bit with how to be a business in the new world.
Right.
Word of mouth is still extremely important. I think they're used to that, but they're just not used to how important social media is for marketing. And when you don't fully understand it, it can be really hard.
You know what? It's an interesting one because, well, I mean, Cervello is a 100% referral business. Like all of our work comes from clients who are either referred by other clients or by our professional community, our network. And we see social media as just a bit of a validation of, you know, being present and being aware and being out there. I don't think we're going to get any new clients from social media, but just maintaining those deep relationships that we've spent years building up, because, you know, our clients and professional connections watch everything we do, is important. How much of the sort of misunderstanding is what, so for those businesses who are a bit more traditional, is sort of understanding that it's about marketing and not sales, you know, about, you know, do you reckon there's a bit of a disconnect there?
I think so, because you don't really see a direct return on investment when you do social media marketing as such. It's very hard to trace it back and say you've got a new client off the back of it. Often what a client will do in any situation now, they'll research your website, they'll look on your social media, might hear from word of mouth, they might look on Google and read those reviews. Like they've done probably 5 or 6 steps before they actually contact anybody. So I think it is very confusing. I think people just feel, like you say, you've got to have a social media presence of some sort. I actually had a really cool talk from a lady called Abby Hugo, who's the White Thistle on Instagram. She's very inspiring. She does all DIY and interiors, and she's a brand partner for lots of big brands like M&S. And she said this quote, which I really believe, actually, it's that businesses need to act more like influencers, and influencers need to act more like businesses.
Okay.
And I think that, and she did say she hates the word influencer, but like social media. And I think what she was saying, and what I agree with, is that for those more established businesses, to try to get that audience, that's capture that slightly younger audience and that generation, that Gen Z and things like that, you need to do a bit more subliminal marketing, more storytelling, more kind of just looking like you understand them, that building that empathy with them in order to capture them, as opposed to being corporate all the time and having all this branded adverts out there all the time. Being more like having a face to your business.
Yeah, you know what? I think be more human is just like a thing that all businesses should do better. And it's interesting how like sort of I've sort of got relationships with businesses who look very, like, you look on their website and they look very corporate, and there might only be 3, 4, 5, 6 people in the business, and you go, actually, what, you know, what your clients, in my opinion, want and need is just a direct engagement with you as people. So where are you telling me about you, and why I should engage with you personally? And I think that's, I mean, where does that come from? Do you reckon that's a throwback on the way that we used to do business, and people were looking for businesses that were established? Where do you think that perception that you've got to look really corporate comes from?
It's a really, really good question. I just think people get scared of that now. I think people are open to a bit of a rough and ready approach. Like the idea of Instagram and Facebook stories, like people want to see behind the scenes. They want to see that. I've seen some really cool reels. I've done one myself recently where I basically had my tripod up and my phone on time lapse, and I just did a video of me creating something, and it was really cool. And I've seen other people do similar things, and actually that's me behind the scenes when I'm not sort of working as such. I'm doing some development work, but people want to see what Chris does, I don't know, when he's in a meeting with no sound, obviously, because I'm sure it's confidential, but they want to see like the personality behind it. They want to see your values. I think just we've grown up, haven't we, in very corporate and the generation before us probably liked that and appreciated that, but actually that rough and readiness.
I just think
further now.
authenticity is always going to be better.
Yeah.
I just genuinely think that, particularly when we're working with clients and there needs to be a really deep relationship and trust,
Yeah.
knowing somebody really well really helps that potential client either decide whether we're right or we're not. And actually, they're like, either of those things is not the end of the world, because if we're not right, we're probably not right for a reason. And actually, we can focus on the clients who really get us, really want to engage, and really want to work together. I'm cool with people saying no, because that allows me to focus on the people who really want to develop longer term relationships. And I think, yeah, there's particularly new businesses, there's a fear, isn't there? Certainly there was when I first started, there was a fear of putting people off.
Yes.
But actually, I've realised that putting people off is exactly what you want to do.
Yes.
Because you want to work with people you really like. So yeah, it's
definitely. I think being very values based, which I know you are, being very clear on your values and using your social media to project those values and project your real personality.
Yeah,
so important.
It's really interesting. I've got a couple of clients who are working at city and working big financial institutions and traders and stuff like that, but they tend to be unique in terms of being quite values based as individuals.
Yeah.
That traditional style, money comes first, life just doesn't float my boat. So it just doesn't, it's that. So then what we do to promote ourselves is going to effectively put them off, and intentionally, because we don't work well with clients like that anyway. So it's just being a bit more selective is probably the way that we want to go. Talk to me about, I know you mentioned earlier on you're launching a podcast. How's it going? What are you going to be sharing? What's the podcast going to be about?
I'm very excited. So it is now launched. It's been a 4-week process of choosing some music, which was really hard, actually. That was a lot harder than I expected. And yeah, recording, editing, getting all the platforms ready. And I know Russ is going to give me some tips tomorrow, which is going to be really handy. So it's called the Jen Lister Podcast, which is really unoriginal, but it's because I kind of couldn't really think of another name. I was like, do I want to talk about focus on business? Do I want to talk about life stuff as well? And I was like, this is advice for business in general. Just don't get paralyzed by those small bits. Just go for it. Do a bit of do a launch. So basically, what it's going to be is I am a strategist. So I work with clients across all of the different areas of their business, like operations, finances, strategy, like people growth, all those kind of things, social media. But I've got it's almost like my little black book. I've got so many amazing people that I know that I will be interviewing along the way that do much more detail and are much, because I'm more of a generalist, they're much deeper in those topics. So one of my first speakers is going to be Liv, who's also one of my clients, but she's incredible. She's a social media manager and she knows her stuff. She's that Gen Z and she's just amazing. So I'm going to be getting on experts in the different areas. I'm going to be talking about business, helping people define their version of success. Sort of want to be speaking to people that are sort of entrepreneurs or have got a bit of entrepreneurial spirit in them, even if they are in the corporate world still and maybe want to transition at some stage. And I will be talking about my life as well. So I'm going to be doing the odd podcast on
personal one,
maybe family, and bring a bit of that into it. I'm also hoping to interview my mother, because she was extremely successful director of operations and did a lot of customer service. So I think customer service is very underrated in business. It's something I work with a lot of my clients on. I'd love to interview someone about sustainability as well. So I've got loads of my values that I want to be bringing up. I've recorded one on imposter syndrome as well, which I think is a really big topic.
100%.
So yeah, I don't know is a honest answer. It's going to evolve.
Talk to me about the imposter syndrome one. What did you share?
So I actually woke up one day and I was meant to be recording 2 podcasts that day at least and doing some other video content for my social media. And I had a real bad bout of imposter syndrome myself. And I wasn't meant to record an episode on imposter syndrome, and I don't know if you've done this in your podcast before, Chris, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to actually do a podcast on this exact topic because I'm struggling with this today. The reason I was struggling is I'd had probably my first no from a client, like my first outright no, which, let's be honest, we're all going to get. I'm sure you've had lots of clients say no.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that we have to be okay with when we have our own businesses. But it had put me in a weird mood because I checked my emails before I got to my desk, and I was like, it just threw me off for the day.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had days like that.
Definitely in the early days.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things is, and I think it's really interesting for you to talk about on the podcast, and it's one I try and teach the kids.
Yeah.
Is that resilience in terms of whatever happens externally, you've just got to continue moving forward.
Yeah.
So it's a weird one. So Charlotte, who's my oldest daughter at the minute, she's got her first A level today, and she's really nervous. Cassie and I were there with the notes yesterday, helping her study and making sure that she was ready. But she really struggled, and we've talked about this on our podcast as well. She really struggled a few weeks ago because she was like, "Dad, this is so important. I want to make sure I do well." And I said, look, we will do everything we can to support you. I know you're going to try your best, but you do realise that if you fail, it's not the end of the world, right? if you completely muck it up, it's not the end of the world, right? And she was like, Dad, this is really, I get it. And then when you're 18, it feels like this next step she needs to get right. And funny enough, Russ, who is the producer of our podcast as well, but he's also turned into a co-host over the last couple of months. We were talking about this on some podcast recording we did yesterday, and the fact that failure is never permanent, is it? And actually, in business and in life, you've just got to get used to failing. You know, you will fail at stuff, and hopefully learn something that you can move on. And I think one of the things that I've learned, hopefully, is that failure is never permanent. You know, that client saying no doesn't mean that next time, the next client will likely say yes. So I think you need to build the resilience, mental resilience. I think having no's is quite important. How do you feel about it now?
Really good, because going back to that values thing, I've realized that maybe our values weren't aligned and it might not have worked anyway. And I've also learned about something that I could have included, because one of the bits of feedback I received was that she wanted to work with someone with retail experience. Well, loads of my corporate background, I've worked with like M&S, Tesco. I went to Australia and worked with Woolworths. I've done loads, but I don't talk about it. So again, I've learned, like I'm sure we all have, what I could do differently, what I can control, and that's brilliant. So it's my other half Ben always calls them teachable moments, and it's my teachable moment. And like I'm going through a journey myself in my business, as we all always are. I always want to be learning and growing. I definitely don't have all the answers, so I love it.
I say to the guys here all the time, every day for me is a school day. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Every day you're in a position where you're learning something new, and just sort of as a human, just evolving and adapting to take that extra knowledge on. So imposter syndrome's one. Talking to experts about the value they add is another. What's the combination of like the sort of how much life you're going to be talking about, how much business? Do you think they merge into one? And
I haven't really explored that yet. I think it will be kind of 70-30 in favor of business. But I do feel like, for me, like you say, you've got a lifestyle business. I'm very open with friends and family about my life in general and stuff, and I like the idea of bringing people on my personal journey. So I might do some podcasts with goal setting. So I do a lot of goal setting throughout the year. So I might do my 6-month goal setting one in July or something.
But share your goals.
And share it live and do that. But what I really want my podcast to be is to be practical, because I love reading books, but I find that a lot of stuff is focused on theory, and I think it's really valuable when you give people practical tips. So my imposter syndrome one, I think I share 5 top tips to help you move forward when you've got imposter syndrome. So I want it to be really tangible and help people.
What I really like is the way you've taken that personal challenge and turned it into something practical for other people to use. So just share with me your top 5 imposter syndrome tips.
Oh, I can't remember them now. So one of them, in fact, the notes are in this book because I wrote some notes for. So one of them is start small. So what I did on the day is I just went on my Instagram and replied to some of my direct messages. So instead of like replying to that particular email where I'd had that no, or instead of going live on my social media and doing a video or recording the podcast, I just
take actions to get you back in.
Yeah, so that was one of them. The other one was an obvious one, like getting out in nature, going for a run, doing something that makes you really, really happy. I'm just trying to find my notes now, you know. Where's the other ones? Here we go, I'm getting close to it now. Here we go. Coach yourself. So obviously I advocate people working with coaches and growing themselves, but actually we can coach ourselves and journal to do that sometimes. So ask yourself why. Focus on your facts. So someone reached out to me actually and said a really nice thing. She was like, read your customer reviews. So I went and read some of my client reviews, which are just beautiful, and actually that makes you remember like what you're good at or why you do what you do. And then the last one was like work with a coach. So say you've got a mindset problem, find a mindset coach. Like build a plan with a coach. If you want to invest in one but you can't afford to, speak to someone and think about how you could do it in the future and save up for it if that's what you want to do.
And having that, just somebody to ask the right questions, and accountability partner is really powerful, isn't it? You know,
it is. And you can find that in a friend. Like you might have a friend that shares the same values as you and is open to that personal growth stuff. Some people are not on that journey, and that's fine, but if you can find someone that is, then you can maybe confide in them when you're having those difficult times.
Yeah, I agree. Well, what do you think sort of most business owners get out of a relationship with a coach? You know, we've talked about accountability a bit, and we've talked about asking the right questions, but what do you feel the tangible benefit is for that business owner?
Yeah, I definitely think accountability is huge, because people just don't progress things when you're accountable to only yourself. You put yourself, I find a lot of my clients end up putting themselves last, and the stuff that they want to progress is on the back burner. So absolutely, working with a coach gives you accountability. It makes you motivated to get stuff done, because I've actually found I love coaching my clients fortnightly, because it gives them enough time to take action on the stuff that we've talked about, and weekly is a little bit too quick for them to be able to put things into place properly. So I definitely feel like accountability is huge. Getting expert advice is really important. So especially when you first start a business, just stuff like what systems to use, what apps to use for email marketing, or how to do your invoices, or just all those basic, I say basic, they're not basic, they're really important, but there's so many little things that you need to set up, getting them set up right. I work with quite a few clients that are kind of sort of service-based businesses, I would say, and I teach them sales strategies and marketing strategies that mean that they're not just trying to muddle through and not achieving their income. So at the start, we always say, like, what do you want to earn? And it doesn't matter if someone wants to earn a few £100s or they want to earn thousands and thousands of pounds. Like, whatever that is, we break it down into what does that actually mean. We look at their offer and their pricing and where are they sitting in the market and against their competition, and we create a plan that's tailored to them. So I've forgotten what the question is that I'm answering now. I've gone off.
So the question is, what do people get when they work with a coach?
Yeah, I genuinely, I think they get change, and some people were scared. And I have my own mentor, because I again believe in the industry so much, and that's something that I invest in. I think people are sometimes scared of change, and sometimes they're not ready to work with a coach, because they will change, and their partner might notice that they change, or their friends might notice that they change, and that can be quite scary for people. So they've got to want to do the work. So interestingly, a lot of my clients come over time. So they might have known me for a few months, and they're like, okay, I'm ready now. So
you know what, I mean, it's really weird, like, sort of, I think in areas where you're encouraging people to face reality and look at what change they need to make, you've got to be ready for that. You know, like, sort of, there's no benefit in me looking at somebody's financial affairs and going, you really need a financial advisor. Because they've got to be then ready to go, actually, I know that I need to make change. I just need the help to do it. And there's no, I think that's why we focus so heavily on building the relationship, so that when they are ready, we're there. And that's the key factor. It's that sort of nurturing the relationship and yeah. So we talked earlier on about being practical. Yeah. And we talked about the fact that we want to share clear tips that people can use to progress their business. What are your top three? What are your top three tips for business?
Funnily enough, I have actually noted on this one just before you jumped on the call. My top three businesses for someone just wanting to start a business in the entrepreneur world. Yeah.
Well, yeah, sounds good.
Go on, ask the question again, because I want to make sure.
I'm going to ask two now. Can you give me an extra one? If you're starting a new business, what are your top three tips? Yeah. If you've got an existing business that you feel needs to change, evolve, grow, what are your top three tips for the more established businesses?
I think when you're starting a business, definitely get help and get advice. So if you can invest in some sort of coach or mentor, that is amazing. If you can't, like, finding people that have got some sort of expertise or have done it, like we said earlier, that can be just as valuable. And not seeking, so my don't is not seeking advice from your friends or family when they're not experienced in that business necessarily. Yeah.
So part of it, I mean, I suppose part of it is building your network, isn't it? You know, making sure that you've got a network of trusted people to work with. And I agree with you. You know, like, one person isn't going to be your definitive expert on something. You know, build a relationship with a number of people you can trust who are experts in respective fields.
Yes, absolutely. And go with your gut and what feels right for you. For example, like, I've wanted to launch a podcast for 2 years. It's taken me 2 years, and I'm kind of glad I gave it the time, because I didn't have the capacity to do it before. But at the same time, a lot of people would say, oh, don't do it. If people were saying that, try to listen to yourself and not listen to what everyone else is saying, but link to your, sorry, go on.
That's interesting. Why were they saying don't launch a podcast?
Just because I had coaches and mentors saying to me, don't do it, because, so for me, I work 3 days a week, but really the equivalent hours of 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously got one-to-one coaching clients, and I look after Mabel. So I've got, I'm time poor. So their advice was to grow my coaching clients first before I thought about a podcast, which isn't going to generate me revenue as such. So it does make sense. But at the same time, if something is burning inside you and you're like, I really want to do this, I think you just got to do it sometimes.
But you know what, as well? I mean, it's a weird one. I mean, I make no money from our podcast. We've built a really decent audience for it, and because it is about kindness, I've been really reticent to. I've got no issues as a business owner making money, and you know, I value my time quite a lot. But I also get a lot out of running a podcast, because you know what it does, Jen? It gives you the opportunity to just phone somebody up and go, and similar to Cervello Live, actually, phone somebody up and go, you're interesting, I'd like to talk to you, without it sounding too weird. Because if I did that and just phone them up, I might not have an excuse or reason to do so. But with a podcast, it's a really good platform to really get insights for yourself personally. So I'll give you an example of that. We had a guy called Kevin on our podcast, Kevin Gaskell, a couple of weeks ago, and I got introduced to him because my book editor is currently his book editor, and Kevin was the ex boss of both BMW and Porsche in the UK. So he's run like big sort of motor businesses. I know nothing about cars, but he ran these big sort of motor businesses and basically turned Porsche around in the UK. It was a failing business, and he turned it into a sort of premium brand again. And funny enough, one of the things that he said on my podcast was the judgment. I said, well, how did you know it was a failing brand? And he said, we were the worst rated brand on customer service in the motor industry in the UK. And actually, how can we be a premium brand and people want our stuff if we have sort of... Now, the interesting thing is the reason that he was on my podcast, which isn't about business, it's about people doing amazing stuff in the world.
Yeah.
Because he'd, in 2021, rode across the Atlantic with 5 other people. And he, you know, my podcast is about people sharing amazing stories of great stuff they've done in the world. And one of the things he was talking about is how important it was to be kind, because you know, if you're on a boat for a few weeks and you're not going anywhere, making sure that the culture of that boat is about accommodation and kindness is really important. But the conversation continued to talk about the work he'd done in his businesses, in these sort of motor businesses, big firms, and why actually as a leader empathy was so important, listening was so important, and it was actually a good insight into that. And for me, it broke down those barriers around saying you assume that corporate leaders are going to all be about the money, the bottom line, and the way that he managed his business was a bit more nuanced. You know, it was about the targets, it was about the goals, it was about achieving an outcome, but it was about bringing his team with empathy to go and achieve that. If you want to, I think that interview's out in a couple of weeks' time. But check that out on the Kindness Project, because it was a really insightful interview in terms of learning a lot about them. So number one is get a coach. Number two is
get a coach / people that know what they're talking about. Number two, well,
listen to your gut.
2 is listen to your gut, but don't just do what other people tell you. Number 3 is, this is all about people, because I do genuinely believe it's about the people, is find your tribe, like find yourself a new tribe, whether it's through a networking group or whether it's just like picking out people that are in your life that you know are going to help you on your journey and raise you up. And don't be afraid to like make new friends or make new business partnerships or business friends, because that will help you on your journey. So for me, the people you surround yourself by is going to define you when you start a business. But for
if somebody's brand new to that and they're watching this and they're thinking that's scary for me, where do they start?
I would look on Eventbrite or just Google like networking events near you. Even if you haven't even started your business, even if you just want to go and meet some entrepreneurial people are really open to that. Or you could like equally just find some people on social media. Like if you go on Instagram especially, people are so willing to make friends with you and just chat, and just find people to chat to that might be in the industry you're looking to go into, or just might have a business themselves. And just start being kind to people, like you were saying, show empathy, compliment them.
Listen.
And it is weird. It is a different way of doing business nowadays, which is why I really believe in using social media to grow your business, because that is the world we're in long term. And you've got to get comfortable with it.
And particularly during COVID, I mean, I've got client relationships and sort of professional connections that I've never met, and that's a new world.
That's
weird,
it's
that element of it's interesting. I do like to still see people though. I like the combination of the two.
You like to give a hug,
Yeah,
don't you?
I love it. I love a hug. I love a hug. I definitely love a hug. Although my 10-year-old is less keen. I did try and give her a hug as she went into. I was doing the school run this morning, and
Nice.
I did try to give her a hug as she left. She wasn't having any of it.
I don't think
I
I'd be
gave
able to
Charlotte a
handle
hug,
that.
but the youngest one is not a hugger.
Charlotte's through it now.
Yeah, well, no, Charlotte is actually super affectionate. Sophie is very assertive. She's a proper boss. Yeah, not particularly a hugger, which is murder for me because I'm like I want to give you no, Dad, not having it.
Wow, that's so funny. I wouldn't be able to handle that when it comes to it with Mabel.
Yeah, I know. And that's the weird thing because they're so different. Like the way the relationship dynamic just works completely differently. So if people have been listening to this interview, thank you for the insight you've shared, by the way. It's been a really good chat.
I've loved it.
Talk to me about where people can find more about you.
Okay, so I've got a website, so it's www.jenlister.com. I'm on Instagram, so @JenListerCoaching, and I'm on LinkedIn. It's Jenny with an IE, JENNIE Lister. I've also got a networking group called The Village, which is all on my website, which is based around the kind of Chelmsford, Colchester kind of area. We've actually got an event coming up called The Retreat. So if anyone is looking for, so it's not a business event at all, it's a self-care event, and that's coming up in July. So if anyone's looking for finding a new tribe and wants to join a very much focus on you and self-care and a really fun afternoon on a Sunday, take a look there. But yeah, mainly Instagram and obviously website. Feel free to contact me.
Good stuff. All right. Well, when this goes out on our social media, we'll make sure we put the links on the show notes and stuff like that, so people can just click through.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Really enjoyed that chat today, Jen, and thank you everybody for watching Cervello Live. Hope you have a really amazing day, and we'll see you on another Cervello Live soon. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.